Welcome to the Freak Show, fellow freaks.
I'm Matthew Brockmeyer,
And I'm Christa Carmen.
and this is
Murder Coaster.
Strap in, ladies and gentlemen, and prepare for a horrifying tale of death metal, devil worship, teenage angst, and satanic sacrifice in Southern California. Today we enter a postmodern mirror maze of satanic panic run amok, where life imitates art, imitates life, imitates art, resulting in a 15-year-old girl being sacrificed to the devil. And today's episode boasts a soundtrack with many amazing indie metal bands. Links to all their music and websites are included in the show notes, so please check them out if you like what you hear.
Let's begin. Prologue. Chloe Moonshine. On the morning of July 23rd, 1995, David Pahler, a hardworking construction worker and father of four, went to check on his 15-year-old daughter, Elyse, his eldest, to discover that she had snuck out of her bedroom. Again. It was the third time this month.
Elyse was a good girl. She got good grades, played soccer, and was even a member of the church choir. But she had a bit of a wild streak. She'd been suspended from school for 5 days for drinking alcohol, and her parents had even found marijuana in her bedroom and then sent her to the Mariposa Community Recovery Center. But she was sweet and kind, only she had this joie de vivre, this lust for life, a passion that often landed her in hot water.
And Elyse was, for lack of a better expression, boy crazy. She'd sneak out of the house to go on dates with older boys, sometimes even snuck boys into her room. But that was part of her flamboyant personality and wild spirit, which extended to other aspects of her life as well. She designed and sewed her own dresses, and wanted to be an actress or singer who would go by the glitzy stage name, Chloe Moonshine.
And you can really see the fun glint in her eye from photographs. And as her grandmother said,
For all her spirit of adventure, Elyse was a good, caring daughter. Nothing could take that away from her.
Lisa's frustrated and angry father saw her empty bed, and he thought she was probably with her best friends, Shannon and Angel. The girls were practically attached at the hip, always together. Elyse even had bunk beds and a sofa in her room, so her friends could spend the night whenever they wanted.
Her father, David, had built the house himself and put Elyse's room on the other side of the house, away from her younger brother and sisters, so she could have her privacy, and to give the free-spirited teen her space. She also had large French doors that opened out to the eucalyptus fields in the distant hills, giving her easy access in and out of the house. Now, David was thinking that this was a very bad idea.
Concerned and determined to track down his wayward daughter, David called Elise's best friend, Shannon.
Hello?
Do you know where Elyse went last night?
Blinking sleep out of her eyes, Shannon asked, Why?
We have to know. She never came home last night. Do you know?
I have absolutely no idea.
Frustrated, He hung up the phone and tried to contact her other best friend, Angel, but she was out of town, at her grandmother's house in Stockton.
Where could Elyse be?
So David and his wife, Lizanne, contacted the Rio Grande police to report their daughter missing. The chief, who'd handled hundreds of missing teenager cases over the years, assured them that she'd be back. Kids do this, and Elyse had a history of running off to be with boys and was known to both drink and smoke marijuana.
But as the days passed, David and Lizanne became more and more concerned. She'd snuck out of the house before, but she'd never run off for days at a time. And she hadn't packed a bag, brought a coat, taken her toothbrush. She wasn't even wearing shoes. Who runs away from home barefoot?
And the last words she'd spoken to her parents kept echoing through their minds.
I love you, and I'm going to bed.
And then one of her classmates said he saw her at Pismo Beach, just 10 miles away, saying she'd cut her hair and was with an older guy in his 20s.
This was then reported as fact in the newspapers. Everyone now assumed she was a runaway, and various schoolmates confirmed that she was a party girl who'd run off with an older guy. This is even what her best friends thought. Shannon saying she was carefree and crazy and often ran off with boys, and even snuck them into her house through the French doors.
But Elyse Pahler had not run away. She wasn't in Pismo Beach with an older guy. After being missing for 8 months, presumed runaway by everyone, her body was discovered just a quarter-mile away from her parents' safe suburban home, mummified in a forlorn eucalyptus grove.
Beautiful, spirited 15-year-old Elyse Pahler had been drugged, beaten, raped both before and after death, stabbed 12 times, and left to bleed out in a sacrifice to Satan by a local teenage death metal band called Hatred. This is her story.
Chapter 1. Hatred in Rio Grande, California, 1995. Nepoma Mesa is a suburban neighborhood outside of Rio Grande, California, about 170 miles northwest of Los Angeles and San Luis Obispo County.
Picture the neighborhood in Poltergeist, and I think you have a pretty good idea of Nepoma Mesa, a small coastal town of subdivisions nestled among rolling hills, orchards, and eucalyptus groves across the mesa from the city of San Luis Obispo.
Now picture a suburban street in 1995, and from the garage of one of the houses comes the screeching guitar and grinding bass and death metal beat of the band, Hatred.
Hatred modeled themselves on the iconic thrash band Slayer, who were also from Southern California, Huntington Park, only 150 miles south. Like Slayer, Hatred played fast, aggressive heavy metal filled with references to death and the devil. But while Slayer strove to musically depict the horrors and evils of the world, singing about chemical warfare, war atrocities, and serial killers, Hatred strove to have music that was actually evil. Not just depicting evil, but literally evil.
Hatred was led by Travis Williams on lead guitar and vocals. At 17, he was the eldest in the group, known to be sullen and quick-tempered. He had an old Toyota pickup truck he'd cart the band around in.
Then there was Royce Casey on bass, 16 years old. He was the outsider of the group. While the rest of the band went to Arroyo High, he went to Lopez High.
Then there was Jacob the Lashmet on rhythm guitar, 15 years old, a deeply troubled kid. His parents were devout Mormons, which he rebelled against with everything he had, calling himself a Satan worshiper and indulging in drugs, snorting speed and huffing paint, ending up in rehab for methamphetamine.
And finally, there was the youngest member, Joey Fiorella, on drums. Joey and Jacob were classmates and best friends, the core of the group. Though he was only 14, Joey was the actual leader of the group, and it was at his mom's house that they practiced.
Every band needs a member with a cool mom who will let them practice in the garage and hang out, support them and their weird friends, bring them pizza pockets and Kool-Aid. And Joey's mom was that person. She'd even pitched in money to get them studio time, where they recorded a demo tape and made 200 copies to distribute in hopes of being the next Slayer or Metallica.
Joey's mom, Betsy Leo, had been a hippie and flower child. As she said, "I was a child of the 60s. We were kind and loving, and we're going to do things differently than our parents." Betsy had been into ESP, hypnotism, and astrology as a hippie before finding Jesus and becoming a licensed minister in the Foursquare Church.
So the Foursquare Church is an evangelical Pentecostal Christian church. Remember, we got into Pentecostalism a little last week, particularly the speaking in tongues. And the Foursquare Church took that even a step further, saying that speaking in tongues is the actual evidence that one has been baptized by the Holy Spirit. So speaking in tongues is the actual evidence of salvation, and no speaking in tongues means no heaven.
The Foursquare Church was started in 1923 by a woman named Amy McPherson, who'd become infamous after she faked her own kidnapping and death after running off with one of her employees she was having an affair with.
Yeah, she's wild. We could do a whole podcast about her craziness. But Joey's mom had been working for the church, converting inmates at the county jail. I don't know, presumably having them speak in tongues in order to be saved. Must have been some wild sounds echoing through that jail there. But then she had a falling out with the Foursquare Church of Arroyo Grande, and over what we don't know, but we can assume that she was most likely seeking out other means of spiritual fulfillment at this time.
Joey's mom, Betsy, was so cool, in fact, that she'd let his 17-year-old high school dropout friend and lead guitarist, Travis Williams, move in with them, even taking Travis on family vacations.
And while Joey may have only been 14, he'd already established himself as a very bad boy, claiming to worship the devil and flagrantly flaunting his marijuana use. He'd been expelled from Arroyo Grande High and sent to the community school in San Luis Obispo for a while, but had recently been allowed back into Arroyo High in the fall of 1994.
Joey had painted his room black and had a collection of occult literature, which he claimed to be an expert in. And this is why he was the de facto leader of the group, because he was the smartest and had the best reading comprehension, often explaining the elements of black magic and devil worship to his older bandmates.
Yeah, Joey had read a book about Aleister Crowley and loved to regale the band with how Crowley had once crucified a frog and then ate the creature. This kid, Joey, man, he's creepy. He's creepy looking little fucker. He kind of looks like a cross between Isaac and Children of the Corn and Damien in The Omen. He kind of looks younger than 14. And it's so weird the way these older kids held him in this high regard. But, you know, he did have the house where you could smoke dope and play electric guitar, so.
Apparently that went a long way. The internet was more or less brand new in 1995, and Joey discovered websites like Hell, the online guide to Satanism, Altar of the Unholies, and Satan's Playground, as well as a publishing company called Maledicta.
The Maledicta website sold everything from books on black magic to scepters and knives, with ads saying things like, Maledicta is pleased to bring you a collection of knives that will make any ritual a truly diabolical event.
And it was here that little Joey Fiorella discovered Anton LaVey's The Satanic Rituals in an ad that read, Learn how to perform the Black Mass, the Call to Cthulhu, Satanic Baptisms, and much more.
Joey ordered the book, which came with an application form to join the Church of Satan. And both Joey and Jacob saved up their money and, after filling out a questionnaire, sent $100 each to the Church of Satan and were accepted as members, even given very cool membership cards.
While Joey may have been a better reader and philosopher than the rest of the group, he was by no means an expert in Satanism or anything else. He was actually woefully and sadly ignorant. While the Satanic Rituals book was meant to be seen as metaphorical and symbolic, Joey took the book completely literally.
As the Church of Satan says about the book, originally published in 1972 as a companion to the Satanic Bible, quote, rituals enhance productivity, offer solace, create focus, and most important, assist as a potent means toward catharsis of emotional states that might linger and hinder one from moving towards one's chosen goals.
In other words, the rituals are purely theater, meant to evoke psychological states, not ceremonies meant to raise literal demons.
The Church of Satan doesn't even believe in an actual devil. And in the book, The Satanic Rituals, there is even a ritual to summon the cosmic entity Cthulhu. As I'm sure most of our listeners know, Cthulhu is a fictional monster from the works of H.P. Lovecraft. So summoning a completely fictional character just shows how these rituals were meant to be a bit tongue-in-cheek, not meant to be taken literally. They're all metaphor.
Did Joey even realize way back in 1995, before the internet and the Lovecraft revival we see today, that Cthulhu was a purely fictional monster and that the Satanic Rituals was a combination of theater and metaphor, not the actual worshipping of devils?
Did he know that his favorite band, Slayer, weren't Satanists at all? That, like LaVey, they used satanic imagery as metaphor and theater? Did he know that the band had long denied being devil worshippers, and that the one-time drummer, Dave Lombardo, was actually a Catholic? That guitarist, Kerry King, said, "Look, I can get into anything I write about. I can write about serial killers. I can write about Satan. But I'm not a Satanist. I'm an atheist. But I write the best satanic lyrics on the fucking planet. And it's great entertainment. And religion is the funnest thing to make fun of."
Well, while we don't know for certain, we can assume that Joey did not know these things, because he took it all very, very literally, not seeing it as the stagecraft, show business, and dramaturgy that it all was.
So, this is how I see a typical day for the band Hatred. I don't know, this is just my imagination, but they're in Joey's garage, and Jacob, the 15-year-old Mormon who is Joey's best friend, keeps fucking up the guitar riff. So the elder in the band, 17-year-old Travis, known for being surly, starts yelling at him. "Dude, come on! It's dump, 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 dump. But you're going dump. I told you to practice the riff, bro."
I know, I've been practicing. I just can't get my fingers to do it.
Then little Joey, sitting behind the drum set, looking creepy as fuck. And this kid, by all accounts, was frighteningly creepy, always quietly staring. Little Joey perks up and says, "There is something we can do to get your guitar playing better. Sell your soul to Satan." They all did it. Robert Johnson, said to be the greatest guitarist of all time, was well known to have sold his soul to the devil on the crossroads in 1936. The Rolling Stones actually made an album called Her Satanic Majesty's Request. Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, man, he sold his soul to play like that. Then bought the beast Aleister Crowley's house in Loch Ness, as well as his robes and his wands.
Fuck, Joey, I joined the Church of Satan with you. What do you want me to do?
We need to do something to really write our ticket to hell. To show our dedication to the Dark Lord and Master who set man free with the fruit of knowledge. We need to find favor with the devil to reign in hell. We need to sacrifice a virgin to Satan.
The elder in the group, Travis, agreed.
Fuck yeah, dude. Murder's the ultimate sin. Sacrifice one of those snobby suburban preppy bitches. Sounds about right to me, man.
And at this point, the bass player, Royce Casey, who, remember, is a bit of an outsider, goes to a different high school and all, he starts packing up his bass, saying, I gotta go, guys. My mom is on her way to pick me up.
So the rest of the band piled into Travis's battered old Toyota pickup and headed to the local Burger King to hang out. And that's how I envision a day in the life of hatred.
I think it's pretty right on.
Up on Space Mountain where it snows shooting stars, I can see me 10 galaxies light years apart. There's
Chapter 2, The Girls.
I put it there with my thumb. I've got complete control of everything and everyone, 'cause I'm alone here. Yeah, I'm alone here.
Elyse Pahler, Shannon Plotner, and Angel Caterini were all 15 years old and beautiful. Elyse and Shannon were blondes and often mistaken for sisters, while Angel was a brunette, the sassy one of the group.
Elyse had been homeschooled for the 6th and 7th grade and was maybe breaking out of a sheltered role when she became friends with Shannon and Angel at Ario Grande High School.
The girls became intensely bonded and did everything together. The group dynamic worked as such, or so it seems. We weren't there, just gathering our clues. Shannon was the good girl, the sweetie. Angel was the sassy one who wasn't afraid to speak her mind, and Elyse, or Chloe Moonshine as they jokingly call her, was the wild child, the party girl. As Shannon said,
Elyse was really fun. She loved going out and was always telling us how she'd snuck out to see a boy or gone to a party. She'd sneak boys into her room. She loved taking those sorts of risks. She was crazy, carefree. We just wouldn't take the same sort of risks as Elyse.
Shannon later said, I guess we kind of envied Elyse. She seemed to be having a good time, like, all the time.
They were all boy crazy and actually had a league table with their top 30 picks of local boys rated on a numeric scale. But all of those boys were upperclassmen.
Just about every boy in 9th grade had asked one of the girls out, but they rejected them all, saying they liked older boys who were more mature. As Angel said, it wasn't that we looked down on guys in our year, we just didn't rate many of them to even talk to. Guys were often hassling us, trying to get us to agree to dates, but we told the ones we didn't like to get lost.
And here's how I picture a typical day for the girls. They all meet up at Elise's house, hanging out in Elise's bedroom, which is secluded and off from the rest of the house. As Angel said,
That's why we liked it so much at Elise's place. We could relax, chill out, talk about everything we wanted without being hassled.
so Shannon is sitting on the bunk bed, putting pictures in the little scrapbook the girls shared. Angel and Elyse are standing before the mirror, putting on makeup and talking about boys. Elyse telling them how she'd snuck off the other night to drive around with some older guy. Shannon telling her that she was crazy and should be more careful. an angel saying that there were rumors that there were actual Satan worshippers in town looking to snatch up a virgin for a human sacrifice, which Elyse just laughed at as being utterly absurd.
Satan worshippers in Napoma Mesa? Yeah, right. There's nothing going on in Napoma Mesa. Then Elyse, in her Chloe Moonshine persona, told them all how when she was a famous actress, they could all come and stay with her in her mansion on Mulholland Drive.
And then they were all off to see Interview with the Vampire in the movie theater for the 5th time. And this is actually true. They had seen this in the movie theater 5 times, and every time it was reported that they would still scream and giggle so badly that ushers would have to come out and warn them to keep it down.
Oh my God, Tom Cruise is so hot!
Then they headed to the local Burger King for some greasy food and socializing.
Chapter 3, Burger King. All the teenagers in Ario Grande hung out at the local Burger King. It was the place to be.
It's funny because when I was a little kid growing up in Baltimore, Maryland, we would all hang out at the Burger King too. We actually had a few of them. There was our local one, the Timonium Burger King, which is the neighborhood where John Waters filmed Polyester. Then there was the one further down the road, the Towson Burger King. I actually preferred the Towson Burger King, thought it was cooler, but there was this weird rivalry between the two neighborhoods. And so the tough kids from Towson would come down to Timonium to fight our tough guy kids in the Burger King parking lot. And we'd all gather around to watch. And this was teenage life before the internet.
Good times. I feel like, not that we hung out there, but I feel like the cool place to at least go when I was a teenager and we had our licenses was Wendy's, not Burger King. So.
Oh, you did the Wendy's, yeah.
Yeah.
We would do Burger King early and then find out like where all the parties were. And then late night, we would sit at the Denny's all night drinking coffee.
Well, yeah, the whole thing mapped out. Gotta love it, gotta miss it. Well, Travis, Joey, and Jacob would come pulling up to the Burger King in Travis's red 1985 Toyota pickup truck with death metal music blaring. And they'd all strut around, acting surly and tough. As a kid from Ario Grande said at the time,
it was like they'd walk into Burger King as if they were something real special. Like we'd all be impressed or something. They gave the impression they didn't give a fuck about anyone. They thought death metal was kind of macho, but most of us reckoned it was pathetic.
The boys got themselves some fries and a milkshake and sat in a booth in the back, where Joey would point out the trio of pretty girls sitting across the restaurant.
There's the ultimate virgin to sacrifice to Satan.
Yeah, which one?
The blonde, Elyse. Sacrificing a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl is the ultimate sin.
Elyse, huh? What, you got a thing for her?
No, she just lives right near me, right down the street.
Well, I know her.
You know Elyse Pahler? How?
I was in art class with her. Then I was in rehab with her.
Elyse Pahler was in rehab? You gotta be shitting me.
Yeah, and get this. For weed. Like you can be addicted to weed. I was there for meth. Can you imagine being put in rehab for weed? What a fucking joke.
Joey would sit there, staring at Elyse in a weird trance. This is something everyone would later say he did. Become fixated on a girl, and then just stare at them, following them, stalking them, just obsessed with his beady little rat eyes. This guy is a creepy little fucker, dude, I'm telling you.
Yeah, very much noted. And across the restaurant, the girls would see them staring, and Sassy Angel would say, "Ugh, those gross metalhead boys are staring at us, as if. Gag me with a spoon."
And good girl Shannon would say, "They creep me out so bad. They're scary."
Wild child Elyse would say, I don't know, I kind of know that boy Jacob. They seem kind of fun. I bet they could get some good weed. And both Shannon and Angel would howl, gross, and pull Elyse out of the Burger King, giggling and blushing.
Then Travis would laugh, tell his 14-year-old drummer and roommate to stop weirding out the girls, man. Then say he had to go sell some weed or something. Take off in his truck, leaving Joey and Jacob, the two best friends, at the Burger King. Bored, Joey and Jacob would go to the hardware store. And while Joey distracted the cashier, Jacob would shoplift a can of spray paint, and they would head to the Pipe of Death.
Chapter 4, The Pipe of Death and the River's Edge. Out in the hills surrounding town, amongst the abandoned eucalyptus groves, lay a huge, decrepit agricultural water pipe Joey and Jacob would hang out inside of, calling it the Pipe of Death. As a friend of theirs would later say,
Yeah, that pipe became their only means of escape, man. They could get blasted out of their brains on drugs, forget about the rest of the world.
Standing on rusted legs 20 feet up in the air, the agriculture pipe hadn't been used in over half a century and was just there, littering the landscape.
10 years earlier, a kid had been playing on it, walking across the top like a tightrope, when he slipped, crashing down, breaking his back. He lived, he didn't die, but the incident still earned the huge irrigation tube the title, The Pipe of Death.
Joey and Jacob would climb a ladder on one of the supports and heave themselves up into the tube. Jacob would shake the can of spray paint he'd stolen, squirt paint onto an old rag, place it into the Burger King bag, and huff the fumes, while Joey spray painted, 666, Hail Satan!
Jacob would tell Joey how much it sucked having Mormons for parents who couldn't understand him, were so brainwashed by religion, saying he wished he had a mom as cool as Joey did, who let him do whatever he wanted.
Joey would say, Do you really want to get good at guitar? Have our band be as good as Slayer? Be rich and famous rock stars?
Jacob, inhaling on the bag of paint, would moan out, Hell yeah, dude! Hail Satan!
Then we have to sacrifice a virgin, show our loyalty to the devil, and commit the ultimate act of evil that will write our ticket to hell.
Jacob would laugh, saying, Shit, dude, you almost sound serious.
I fucking am serious. Just like the Slayer song, Necrophiliac. Virgin child now drained of life, your soul cannot be free. Satan's cross points to hell.
Then Jacob would spark up a joint, and they'd smoke it as Joey recited from the Book of Satanic Rituals, his voice echoing through the long tunnel.
My brothers and sisters of the ancient blood, we are gathered to pronounce the call to Cthulhu. I cry against the word of the abyss, that great void of the dark waters and shrieking winds, where we lived in ages past. Hear the deathless ones, and say with me the call to the eternal serpent, who sleeps that we may live. From Yugoth I am come to the world of horrors, here to abide and rule for all eternity.
Then the boys would stumble back to Joey's house and watch the movie, The River's Edge.
The River's Edge was their favorite movie, and they would watch it over and over and over again. A friend of theirs said, quote, "They were completely wrapped up in that movie. It became like a blueprint for their life. They never stopped talking about it. We thought it was a bit weird, to say the least."
And The River's Edge is actually an incredible film. It's one of my absolute favorite movies. For those unfamiliar, The River's Edge is a 1986 movie starring a very young Keanu Reeves and is based on the real-life 1981 murder of 14-year-old Marcy Conrad in Milpitas, California.
Marcy Conrad had been strangled to death by a 16-year-old boy named Anthony Broussard, who then sexually assaulted her before tossing her corpse into a ravine. Anthony then went and bragged about it to all his friends at school, 13 of whom came out to see for themselves, one of whom even half-heartedly tried to conceal the body with leaves.
The plot of the movie centers on the shocking fact that all these kids knew about it, but no one went to the police to report the murder. And I actually used to watch this movie over and over again, just like these kids. But to me, it spoke of the alienation and indifference inherent in growing up in a cold and valueless post-nuclear society, which were themes very different from the teen comedies that were coming out at that time, which all glamorized youth and being young. While this movie is just utterly bleak and soul-shattering. It's really so very, very dark. But I always connected with the Keanu Reeves character, who, though a pot-smoking metalhead, is the hero and voice of morality and reason, telling Ione Skye, "I kept seeing her face. Didn't you? It affected me. I mean, I knew Jamie. And there she is dead right in front of us. And even that close, we don't feel like we've lost anything."
But Jacob and Joey sided with the killer, who is just a straight psychopath, saying, "I killed a girl because I wanted to show the world who was boss. She couldn't move, she couldn't scream. I had total control over her. She was dead there before me, and I felt so alive."
Even the Dennis Hopper character Fleck, an old murdering biker, saying, "He didn't love her, man. He didn't love her."
But the truth is, this group of teenagers were much more like the little boys in the movie. Mean-spirited and cruel children. Incredibly dumb, ignorant of the world, and filled with grandiose and self-serving hatred.
It's really just a crazy postmodern mirror maze. This movie about disconnected California metalhead teenagers that was inspired by a true case of murder ends up being the inspiration for real-life metalhead kids to commit a senseless murder. And then this whole entire incident supposedly goes on to inspire the movie Jennifer's Body. It's art imitating life, imitating art, imitating life, imitating art. These simulacrums going back and forth in a downward spiral. And you can even throw in the book Devil House by Mountain Goat singer John Darnielle, which was also inspired by the original murder and the movie The River's Edge. You ever read John Darnielle?
I have. I think I've read all three of his last three books, and he actually came to my town and did an event at the Savoy bookstore, and I can't remember which book it was for, but he was really, really
Was it
cool
for
guy.
Devil House? That was the last one that just came out.
No, I think it
years
was
ago.
it was a
Harvester
little bit.
International?
I'll look it up.
International
I can't-
Harvester? So, yeah.
I think it was that one.
It's the one like there's a videotape that you get rent from the store, and it's got like these weird clips in it. When you rent a movie, there'll be like weird clips that someone had taped over the movie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was that one. But yeah, he's really cool, and I like his work a lot.
Quiet Tower.
Very much so. It's I don't know. I kind of think he's kind of in like a class all by himself. It's pretty different even from what I would consider quiet horror. I don't know. It's sort of like meta in a little way, in some ways, and like folds back in on itself. I don't know. It's like
It's definitely very
puzzle box.
meta, yeah. And a kind of rural gothic in a way.
Totally. To get back to our Satanists, one of the main reasons they loved the film was because there were several Slayer songs in the film. Though none of the teenagers in the movie ever professed to worship Satan, as that would have been pretty silly.
Yeah. Sometimes reality is much sadder and sillier than our imaginations can ever be.
Chapter 5. Hell Awaits.
One day in March of 1995, Elyse and Angel were walking to Lisa's house. The morning fog had lifted, revealing blue skies. The surrounding hills and meadows were still lush and green from the winter rains, dotted with vibrant wildflowers, California poppies and lupines beginning to bloom. A gentle breeze was blowing in from the Pacific Ocean, carrying with it the scent of salt water and fresh earth. And who should come walking down the street but Jacob, Joey, Royce, and Travis.
Oh my god, said Angel as they came upon them. Such dweebs. Look the other way.
Jacob, ever the charmer, smiled at the girls and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" But the girls ignored him, so he said, "What, don't you even say hi?"
Hi.
"So what are you doing?"
We gotta get to Elise's place to do our studies.
"Oh, your studies. Wow, you girls are serious."
The girls just kept walking, prompting Jacob to shout.
"What, you got a problem with us?"
Angel, the sassy one, defiantly shouted, Problem? No, why? Should we have a problem with you?
"Hey, why don't you come over to Joey's house and we'll have ourselves a party?"
No way, Angel snapped.
But Jacob couldn't help notice that Elyse was shyly grinning. So he said to her, "Hey, what about you? Why don't you come?"
As Elyse sat there, grinning mischievously and batting her eyes, Angel grabbed her by the arm and pulled her away, saying, Come on, they're out of their heads.
After that, Elyse started noticing Joey lurking around the neighborhood.
He lived up the street, so it wasn't that odd. But one day she looked out her window to see him sitting on his BMX bike right outside her house, staring into her window.
When he saw her, he smiled eerily and waved, and she smiled back.
A friend of Elise's later said, She thought he kind of liked her. He was only 14, younger than her, and she thought it was kind of sweet.
In May of 1985, Elyse ran into the boys again, on the corner up the street from her house. "Quick, you gotta help," Jacob yelled. "We got a problem."
They were pointing to a bank on the side of the road that led down to a eucalyptus grove, saying,
"There's a guy stuck down there with a broken leg. We gotta help him."
When Elyse started down the bank, the boys surrounded her and began chanting, Do it, do it, do it, do it.
Then a hand shot out and pushed Elyse over. She fell, tumbling down the embankment, when suddenly a voice rang out.
Hey, what are you boys doing?
And they looked up to see Elise's mom approaching, and they all ran off.
Elise's mom expressed concern, saying she'd seen the boys lurking around, like they were stalking her or something. But Elyse was more bemused by the incident than anything else, saying, They're just stupid mixed-up kids, Mom. They won't do anything bad.
Elyse later told Angel about it, saying,
It was kind of weird. I just don't know why they did it.
Angel said,
Just keep away from them.
and Elyse just giggled. As Angel would later say,
In some ways, Elyse was freaked out by those boys, but she was also very curious about them because they were so different from most of the boys we came across. I knew she wouldn't keep away from them like I told her.
Spring came. The school year ended, And soon it was summertime in the little Southern California town.
On July 21st, 1995, Elyse went to a little party at a friend's house. Joey and Jacob were there.
While Joey sat in the corner, staring at her in that terrifyingly weird way of his, Jacob, whom she knew from both art school and rehab, approached her and started up a conversation.
Jacob, who'd been raised to be a polite Mormon and was easy with a smile, charmed her. And Elyse even told Jacob that her friend had warned her to stay away from them. Jacob saying,
"Hey, come on, we're all decent guys. Trust me."
This could be that moment in a teen movie when the kids reveal themselves to each other to be kind, sweet, and caring, where the preppy girl falls for the bad boy with a heart of gold. But unfortunately, Jacob did not have a heart of gold. He was a sociopathic, conniving piece of shit.
Elyse, who loved marijuana, asked Jacob if he could get her any, and Jacob told her, "Sure thing, I can get you some wicked weed." And Elyse gave Jacob her phone number. The whole time, Joey never stopped, coldly staring at them from across the room.
The next day, Elyse told Angel, "They're not so bad. I think you got them all wrong."
"Just be careful," Angel told her friend.
"Angel, I told you, they're cool."
"They're creeps, and you better watch out for them."
"I kind of like that Jacob."
"Oh my god, you're kidding me."
"No, I think he's cute."
"He's a weirdo, Elyse."
"I gave him my phone number."
"What?" "Be careful, Elyse. Be very careful."
"You worry too much, Angel. I might even see him tonight."
Chapter 6: Altar of Sacrifice. And that very night, Jacob and Joey called Elyse from the Mesa View market. Jacob told her he had some killer weed and some acid. She should come meet him down the street. They could go party in the eucalyptus fields behind her house.
Elyse, always the wild child, said sure. Sounded fun. She threw on a sweatshirt, opened the French doors, and headed out into the warm summer night, not even bothering to put on a pair of shoes.
As Jacob and Joey were hanging up the phone, their bass player, Royce Casey, just happened to be walking into the market. They told him, "Oh man, come with us. You don't want to miss this."
Royce knew exactly what they were talking about. Joey had been talking about sacrificing the blonde girl in his neighborhood for ages now. And Royce was eager to see if Joey would really follow through with his boasts about murdering her for Satan and having sex with her corpse. So he joined them as they skipped out into the night to meet the pretty teenage girl and take her out to the eucalyptus field.
Fuck, this is so heartbreaking and sad. These kids are such idiots. This girl actually liked them. She actually thought they were cool. She could have been the band's first big fan. She wanted to party. I mean, fuck, a pretty girl wanted to party with these loser guys. And what do, man? Fuck. I hate them. I really do. I hate them so very, very much. Fuck.
Yep, I fucking hate these fuckers too. So 14-year-old Joey Fiorella, his 15-year-old best friend, the charming Mormon, Jacob Delaschmut, and the 16-year-old bassist in their band, Royce Casey, who lived in the next town over and went to a different high school, met pretty and vibrant Elyse Pahler, aka Chloe Moonshine, who made her own dresses and dreamed of being a famous actress, and who loved to smoke pot.
Oh, they gave her some pills, something that made her groggy and sleepy. I don't know, I'm guessing Xanax or Valium or something like that. And the four teenagers headed out into the fragrant trees of the Chamisaw Lane eucalyptus grove. And eucalyptus is a smell I always associate with California. I can still remember going to San Francisco for the first time and just being overwhelmed by that unique smell. But these trees are not native. The first eucalyptus trees in Southern California were planted in 1865 by one William Wolfskill, pretty much just to lively up the bleak and barren landscape.
The trees, native to Australia, did well in the dry climate, thrived. Farmers started planting rows of them as windbreaks to protect their crops, and it came to be believed that the medicinal smell kept malaria at bay. Folks started planting more and more eucalyptus, and because they grow so quickly, climbing up to 125 feet tall with wide trunks, it was thought they could be used as lumber in treeless Southern California, which was relying on expensive imports of Appalachian hardwood.
So by 1907, ranchers were planting huge fields of eucalyptus. 1909 alone saw the creation of more than 23,000 acres of eucalyptus groves. Some farmers even replaced productive fields of vegetable crops with eucalyptus stands. And the Los Angeles Board of Water Commissioners proposed to plant 25 million eucalyptus trees along the Owens River Aqueduct.
But in 1913, the eucalyptus bubble burst when the U.S. Department of Agriculture officially confirmed what many knew already. Eucalyptus wood warped, cracked, and twisted when dried, and was no good as lumber. Many investors were ruined, and huge groves were just abandoned, like the ones in Nepoma Mesa on Chamisaw Lane, where Elyse, Joey, Jacob, and Royce went to get high.
They sat in the shadows of the tall trees, pale bark peeling off their smooth trunks in that peculiar way, the scent of the ocean mixing with that minty, citrusy, cat piss-like smell of the twisted eucalyptus trees. They laughed, and Jacob packed a bowl with weed, passing it to Elyse, who was already groggy from the pills they'd given her.
Much of what happened next is disputed, but what we do know for sure is that at one point, Jacob, whom Elyse thought was so cute and had a secret crush on, stood up, walked behind her, slipped his spiked belt free from his pants, and wrapped it around Elise's neck, choking her and pinning her down as Joey pulled a hunting knife and began to stab her in the neck.
Royce then jumped in, holding her down while Jacob stabbed, and at some point, Royce began to slash her clothes off, cutting her sweater. Her pants were pulled down, and Royce Casey cut at her underwear.
It's alleged that as she lay there bleeding, calling out to her mother and praying, both Joey and Jacob raped her. Royce Casey denies sexually assaulting her, but says he did stomp up and down on her neck as she lay crying for her mother.
None of the wounds were fatal. No major organs or arteries were cut, but she was bleeding badly. They dragged her naked body to a massive branch, propping her up and laughing at her, where beaten, stabbed, and drugged, she slowly bled out into the sandy earth and died.
Chapter 7, Post-Mortem.
drifts in like the fog on the lake, as dreams shift in between asleep and awake inside of me, as the day sneaks in.
The next morning, Elise's parents, David and Lisanne, were frantic when they went to Elise's bedroom and discovered her missing, calling her friends first, then police, filling out a missing persons report.
Frustratingly, authorities were simply convinced that Elyse was a runaway, though her parents insisted otherwise, saying she hadn't brought a change of clothes with her toothbrush. She hadn't even taken shoes, but had disappeared barefoot.
David and Lisanne racked their brains for anything weird or suspicious, telling police how a group of neighborhood teens had pushed their daughter down a bank in the winter. The police never pursued this or took it seriously, still thinking she was a runaway.
In fact, because of the rumor that Elyse was in Pismo Beach with some mystery guy, the area around her home was never searched. They never brought out search dogs looking for her, although she'd run out in bare feet, her scent easy to follow. Had they done any kind of cursory search, they would have quickly found her there in that sad and forlorn eucalyptus grove, slowly mummifying in the hot summer sun, just a quarter-mile away.
So David and Lisanne launched their own investigation, hiring a private detective and printing up thousands of missing flyers.
And then another girl from town went missing, sparking speculations of perhaps a killer. But then that teen turned up, further reinforcing the idea that Elyse was just a runaway.
A 20-year-old guy up the street had gone missing, running off from his parents' house, and there was a lot of speculation that Elyse had left with him, that they had had some kind of affair going on. The private detective was eventually able to find the guy, all the way in Indonesia. The guy didn't even know her. It was all a crazy red herring.
Joey and Jacob, meanwhile, were bragging to their friends they had committed the ultimate sin to God and bought their ticket to hell. And just like that movie, The River's Edge, no one turned them in or seemed to care that much. Sadly, there was no Keanu Reeves character to show some basic empathy and humanity, to see just how vile, sick, and twisted it all was.
And it was vile and sick. Much worse than that movie. For they'd go back to the eucalyptus grove for weeks afterwards, laughing at the slowly mummifying corpse, having sex with the body, incanting bullshit prayers to Satan, reciting ridiculous things like the ceremony of the 9 angels.
Honor to Azathoth, without whose laughter this world should not be. Azathoth, great center of the cosmos, let thy flutes sing unto us, lawing us against the terrors of thy domain. Thy merriment sustains our fears, and we rejoice in the world of horrors in thy name.
In August of 1995, 6 weeks after Elyse disappeared, Angel and Shannon went camping with some friends at nearby Lopez Lake. It was hot as could be, mosquitoes coming out in droves, and they were sitting around a table outside their tent when a red Toyota pickup came rumbling up the dirt road. A pickup truck driven by Travis Williams and carrying Royce Casey, Jacob Delchamont, and Joey Fiorella.
The boys lumbered out of the pickup truck and strolled up to the girls sitting around the table. Angel later said,
Their eyes were beady, and they'd clearly been drinking.
Jacob, the charmer of the group, asked, Hey, aren't you friends with that girl Elyse?
Yeah, that's right, Angel answered, knowing exactly who he was, the bad boy that Elyse had thought was so cute.
What do you think happened to her?
Something bad. I just know it. She was my best friend.
What do you mean by bad?
Maybe she went off with that guy that lived up the street, and maybe he killed her?
Whoa, heavy duty. You really think that happened to her?
Maybe.
You want to go for a walk? Come on, it's a beautiful evening for a walk.
Angel said no way. But Shannon was game and went off with the boys.
As they walked through the rolling hills, through strands of oak, the dry, straw-colored grasses swaying in the breeze, Jacob asked Shannon, "You really think something happened to Elyse?"
I know Elyse, and she wouldn't have just gone without letting us know.
That's really scary, man.
Shannon thought Jacob sounded like he really cared. Like he truly cared for Elyse, who'd actually had a secret crush on him. Shannon began to think that maybe Elyse was right. These boys weren't that bad after all. Just rough around the edges. But then she noticed little Joey staring at her. Quiet, so cold, he appeared to be sneering at her, almost snarling. The deadness and menace to his eyes struck her, and fear ran icy through her veins, and she turned back.
"Hey, where are you going?" asked Jacob.
I gotta get back to my friends, replied Shannon as she quickly hurried away.
"You want to come to a party tonight?"
No thanks.
Shannon would later say.
When I think back on it, it was really scary. They'd all been doing drugs and their breath smelled really bad of alcohol. But it was Joey who scared me the most. He seemed completely crazed.
"I don't know, but I think these guys planned on killing her. Remember, they were obsessed with blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls. They kept saying they were the ultimate sacrifice. And Shannon had blonde hair and blue eyes. In fact, she and Elyse were often mistaken for sisters."
The incident struck Angel as well. There was just something so malevolently creepy about those boys. Scary. She began to dream about the four metalheads, remembering how Elyse had told her they'd once knocked her down a bank. She began to wonder if maybe they had something to do with her disappearance. So, she went to the Arroyo Grande Police Department and reported her fears and suspicions.
A deputy took down her statements and shared it with absolutely no one. So it was never noticed that Elise's parents had reported an incident with the same exact boys. The case was left on a pending file, and Elyse was just considered another runaway. There was basically absolutely no investigation going on for this missing 15-year-old girl.
And other kids at Arroyo Grande High School also thought Joe and Jacob could be responsible, especially as they hinted at their involvement and acted oddly.
Joe and Jacob then began to talk to Angel and Shannon all the time, hang out with them, constantly pestering them with questions about what they thought happened to Elyse, the girls trying their best to ignore them and get away from them. One day, Jacob came up to Angel and said, "I know Elyse has just gone off with some guy. She couldn't get enough of it. She was a horny bitch. She got what she deserved."
This greatly angered Angel, who said he had no right making those comments. It was totally out of line.
Jacob grew weirder and weirder, pestering Shannon for a date.
But his old charm wasn't working. Shannon wanted nothing to do with him.
And you know, I can pretty much guarantee you his guitar playing did not improve either, despite sacrificing a girl to the devil. He became obsessed with Nazism, perhaps inspired by the Slayer song Angel of Death, which has caused the band a lot of problems, people trying to claim they're Nazis because they wrote a song about Joseph Mengele, even though if you listen to the song, it's clearly about the horror of the Holocaust, and definitely not pro-Nazi at all.
Well, Jacob started scrawling swastikas everywhere, writing SS on everything. His drug use got out of control. He started going on meth binges, missing days of school at a time, high on speed, and was eventually expelled for being constantly absent.
While Jacob became infatuated with Nazis, Joey went deeper into devil worship and what he thought Satanism was. And they'd hang out in the pipe of death, puffing paint, snorting speed, talking about the devil and the power of evil. Joey, too, started getting into all kinds of trouble at school and was also expelled for the second time in February of 1996.
Meanwhile, there were more and more sightings of Elyse, hanging out at this beach or that, smiling, tan and pretty, her blonde hair blowing in the wind. She was like a ghost, popping up all over, young and free and alive. But the truth was, her body lay there still, in the shadows of those tall eucalyptus trees.
Chapter 8. Silent Scream. On September 30th, 1995, Travis Williams, the 17-year-old lead guitarist for Hatred, broke into the home of a 75-year-old woman named Mabel Agueda with his friend Tommy Troffer. While the old woman slept in a recliner in front of the television, Travis shot her in the back of the head.
The two teenagers were quickly apprehended and arrested. Everyone at the high school was talking about the murder, and about Joey and Jacob, who were best friends with the killer, in a metal band with him. Travis even lived with Joey sometimes, went on vacation with him.
And then there was a new rumor going around the high school as well. As a fellow classmate later said,
People were saying Joey and Jacob got into some really weird shit. The rumor was they'd killed a girl after sacrificing her to the devil. I think many believed there was some kind of test of loyalty about the whole business. No one wanted to be the one who told on the boys. Also, many of us were real afraid about what they might do to us.
So life went on in Rio Grande, San Luis Obispo County, California.
When Christmas rolled around, it was incredibly hard on the Pahler family. David began to think that her friends were hiding her, that they knew something. He grew suspicious of them and angry.
As Shannon later said,
I'm certain they reckoned we'd be in touch with Elyse, but of course we hadn't. It made it kind of difficult talking to them.
And Elise's mother, Lisanne, couldn't help thinking about those weird teenagers she'd seen push Elyse down the bank that time.
But she'd reported the incident to the police. Surely they'd followed up on the lead. Must have proven the teenager's innocent, right?
Of course, they had not.
And still, there were more and more sightings of Elyse. People even calling her parents to report they'd seen her at some beach with surfers or in the passenger seat of a convertible.
I think there's just a lot of young, pretty blonde girls in Southern California. And every time somebody saw one, they'd be like, oh, look, it's Elyse. And then, trying to be helpful, thinking they were good Samaritans, they'd call it in. Her grandmother, sadly believing all the sightings, even wrote an open letter in the local newspaper saying,
I miss you and I love you. Everyone is very worried and heartbroken because we don't know how you are. If you are happy, warm, well-fed, and healthy. I promise you, I do not want to drag you home. I just want us to sit down and talk and hug. Please just call so we can know you are alive. My love always, Nana. Jesus Christ, stab me in the heart with fucking tragedy here.
It's just a heavy story, man. Fuck. Chapter 9. Angel of Death.
Royce Casey was the outsider in the band. He lived in the next town over, went to a different high school, and was the bass player.
You want to hear a bass player joke?
Sure.
What do you throw a drowning bass player?
What?
His amp.
Well, Royce wasn't taking the pressure of having been part of a murder very well. I bet his bass playing didn't improve either. The devil is a trickster.
Royce claims he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, was being consumed with regret and paranoia. In a weird twist of fate, he'd often see Angel at the Burger King, and they'd talk, drinking milkshakes. This story feels so much like some kind of David Lynch movie or something, like how Twin Peaks. Now Angel, the sassy girl, is drinking milkshakes with the loner bass player. I can just like hear the music, that bass going.
As Angel said, Royce was more gentle and didn't seem as freaky as the others. We talked about lots of things, including Elyse. He seemed genuinely upset about what had happened to her. I thought he was kind of sweet considering he hardly knew her.
He's kind of sweet. He stomped up and down on her neck by his own admission. Royce told Angel how Jacob had become incredibly weird, and he was trying to avoid him. He said they'd all gotten into Satanism and had broken into a graveyard and marked the graves they wanted to go back and dig up. But that was not his scene, man. He didn't like all that stuff. He was just in it for the music.
He also told Angel he was afraid. Afraid they might do something to him. Might hurt him. Or worse.
Royce then joined the New Life Ministry Church in nearby Pismo Beach and devoted himself to Jesus. He'd been saved. Hallelujah.
One day in March of 1996, 8 months after the murder, he asked one of the ministers if he'd done something really bad, something really, really bad. Could God ever forgive him? Could God forgive anything?
Of course, the minister said, and confession is good for the soul.
And Royce told him everything. How his friends had drugged a 15-year-old girl, and he'd helped hold her down as they stabbed her, then cut off her panties and stomped on her neck, all so the guitarist in his band Hatred could play like Kerry King.
And I would bet that this was not what that minister was prepared to hear. Fucking hell. Can you imagine telling this teenage kid you can tell me anything and then have him saying that? Oh, fuck.
No, I cannot. On March 13th, 1996, Royce Casey went into the Arroyo Grande police station and confessed his part in the killing of Elyse Pahler. When asked why they would do such a thing, Royce Casey said,
"Well, by making the perfect sacrifice to the devil, we would gain more craziness or nuts. It would make our band play harder, play faster. And by making this perfect sacrifice to the devil, it could really help us go professional."
Okay, it's crazy to me that he said that, because it's like, I was sort of thinking like, okay, he went and confessed, he like knew that they had done something terrible, but then he says that? Like, what the fuck?
I think one thing we have to remember when we're talking about these children here is that they're all morons. They're incredibly stupid.
Man, I mean, still, I don't know.
Well, I mean, he wants to be honest, I guess. You know what I mean? He's being honest.
Yeah.
And he's really super stupid. He never got a lawyer. He should have got, you don't go to your minister, you go to a fucking lawyer. You know what I mean? And you don't go into the cop station. And they asked
bring
him
to the
he
body.
had to sign a paper saying that he agreed to talk without his parents. Because he's a fucking minor. You know, and he agreed to talk without his parents, agreed to talk without a lawyer. And he just wanted to be a good person. The cops don't give a fuck if you want to be a good person. You know, because he, as we'll see, they didn't give him any leniency whatsoever. None.
Yeah.
Not that I think he really deserves it. I mean, he wasn't.
I don't think so. So Royce then led investigators out to the eucalyptus grove, where Elyse Pahler's body had been desiccating for over 8 months, losing moisture to the Southern California desert and slowly mummifying.
Little Joey Fiorello was arrested. his lenient hippie mom coming to the station with him, Jacob Delishmunt next, his strict Mormon parents utterly mortified.
All three were charged with 7 counts, including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit rape, and kidnapping. They were interrogated and taken to the Juvenile Services Center.
The morning drifts in like a fog on the lake, as dreams shift in between asleep and awake inside of me. As the days
On March 15th, Angel and Shannon went to first period at Rio Grande High School, and as they sat at their desks waiting for the teacher to begin class, the boy in front of them turned around and said, "Hey, you know they cut your friend's head off?
What are you talking about?
Your friend Elyse? Well, they found her body over by Camisole Lane yesterday."
You're kidding me.
And then another boy joined in and said, "Yeah, they cut the head clean off. Weird."
Shannon would later say, "It was bad enough hearing that Elyse was dead without all the sick comments. In some ways, that got to us more than Elise's murder. It was real upsetting."
The girls were excused from class and wouldn't return to school for weeks.
Disturbingly, some kids bragged about being friends with Joe and Jacob, saying they even knew about the murder and hadn't told anybody. Exactly like that movie, The River's Edge. Again, that bizarre mirror maze of life imitating art, imitating life, imitating art.
Dental records confirmed Elise's identity, and the Pahler family was devastated, especially as for over 8 months, the police had insisted she was a runaway and refused to even do a search of the area.
God, that's like fucking major salt in the wounds. Forensics confirmed Elyse Pahler had died from multiple stab wounds to the torso, though none of the stab wounds were fatal in and of themselves, and she had bled to death. Medical evidence seemed to also indicate that she'd been tortured and raped, though it couldn't be definitively confirmed as the body was too far into decomposition. But using the suspected rape and torture elements, the deputy district attorney attempted to enhance the charges with special circumstances.
A memorial service was held on March 25th in Elm Street Park. Shannon and Angel were there, tearfully telling reporters,
Elyse could make anyone laugh and make anyone happy.
They lit candles and sang Amazing Grace.
Royce Casey, despite being the one to turn himself in, was still the oldest of the three, and he was not given any leniency. Prosecutors also found his journal, a sad and pathetic thing, full of nonsense and misspelled words, but saying how they'd wanted to sacrifice a virgin.
Travis Williams, already in jail for the break-in and murder that we talked about earlier, he piped up from prison and said, "Yeah, Joey and Jacob had asked him to help kill Elyse." So much for band loyalty. The three were tried separately. Joey reached a plea agreement where he pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in exchange for a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 26 years.
Royce Casey accepted a life sentence as well, and was sentenced with life with the possibility of parole after a minimum of 21 years.
Jacob Delishmunt also pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the chance of parole after a minimum of 26 years.
But Elise's parents, David and Lisanne, didn't just blame the sick and twisted teenagers. They blamed the entire culture. They blamed the music, they blamed thrash, they blamed death metal, but mostly, they blamed Slayer.
David and Lisanne Pahler sued the band Slayer, claiming their songs Postmortem from the Rain and Blood album and Dead Skin Mask from the album Seasons in the Abyss gave the three killers detailed instructions to, quote, stalk, rape, torture, murder, and commit acts of necrophilia on their daughter. End quote. Which, in my humble opinion, is utterly ridiculous. Dead Skin Mask is obviously about Ed Gein. They talk about Ed Gein. These kids never used her face as a mask or skinned her. And Postmortem, I mean, it's a weird song, but to me, Postmortem is really just a poetic reflection on death, saying,
My sinful glare at nothing holds thoughts of death behind it. Skeletons in my mind commence, tearing at my sanity. Vessels in my brain carrying death into my breath. Come and die with me forever. Share insanity.
And the lawsuit was originally filed in 1996, but delayed until 2000 when the killer's trial was concluded. The initial case was originally thrown out, the judge wisely stating, quote, "There is not a legal position that could be taken that would make Slayer responsible for this girl's death. Where do you draw the line? You might as well start looking through the library at every single book on the shelf."
Undeterred, the Pahlers launched a second lawsuit, claiming that Slayer, quote, knowingly distributed harmful material to minors, end quote. This case, too, was dismissed, with Judge E. Jeffrey Burke stating, quote, I do not consider Slayer's music obscene, indecent, or harmful to minors, end quote.
Jacob Delashmidt himself would say, quote, "The music is destructive, man, but that's not why Elyse was murdered. She was murdered because Joey was obsessed with her and obsessed with killing her."
In 2021, Royce, the outsider bass player who brought the whole disgusting house of cards down, got his first chance for parole. Members of Elise's family did not oppose his release, and it was looking good for him, as he had a record of over 20 years of good behavior in prison, had attended several rehabilitation programs, completed high school, and was pursuing a bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology, and expressed deep regret for the crime.
Royce received parole, but before he was released, a California state's attorney wrote a letter to the governor opposing the release. In this document, he claimed that Royce never adequately explained why he agreed to participate in such a sadistic crime, and Royce's right to parole was denied by the governor.
All three of the bandmates are still in prison.
The ringleader, creepy little Joey, is now 43 years old and held in the High Desert State Prison. Jacob, the charming Mormon boy who loves speed and Nazis, is held in correctional training facility. And Royce Casey, the outsider bass player hoping for parole, is imprisoned in Valley State Prison.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of the murder of Elyse Pahler.
Ooh, boy, that is crazy shit, huh?
Yeah. I think I'm shocked that Royce is even like considered for parole, and I'm also shocked as to, I mean, obviously like they must have their reasons, but that her family is not opposed to it. Like that to me, I mean, I don't know, maybe they've got some sort of, I don't want to say softness, but something in their hearts for the fact that he's at least the reason that they knew what happened to her. And I get that, like, he turned himself in and he didn't maybe do quite like he held her down versus like the actual strangling and stabbing and all that, but like
he did stab her at one point.
Yeah, fuck him. Fuck
and he
all
jumped
three
up
of
and
them.
down on her fucking neck, dude, which is
Yeah,
so brutal,
like,
dude. That's
fuck all
really,
three of
that's so
them.
childish.
Well. All right, I'm gonna go wash my eyeballs out with bleach and my brain maybe. I can,
Did you look at the picture of him?
Yeah, I totally
Joey?
did.
Oh my god, he's so creepy looking.
They look like they're methed out, like especially Joey. Yeah, I don't know. That was a rough one. Interested to hear what our listeners have to say, as always.
And thank you so much to the bands that contributed music to today's episode. They were all fantastic. The Red River Riot, Blaspheme O, Mikey Massacre, Hellish Torment, Everet Almond, and Holizna. I'm going to put links to all their stuff in the show notes. Check them out. And hey, you want your band on the show? Drop us a line at murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com, and drop us a line for any reason at all at murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.